half the world is unbanked. How is it that for so many of us, banking seems like such an important element of how we manage our lives, whereas for so many other people, banks seem so distant, so irrelevant, so inaccessible? The magnitude of the financial inclusion challenge is so large that we need to get back to basics, and the basics is understanding the role of money. We can represent money in three different ways, which I show here as clouds. The first one is a physical cloud of money, which is represented by the tokens of coins and bits of paper that we refer to as cash. This is where many people live because all the money they make, all the payments they make are in cash. Then there's a separate electronic form of money, where money is a mere sequence of zeros and ones in a server somewhere. This is where we want financial services to live, because if money is digital, it is a lot easier to supervise to make sure it's safe. It's a lot easier to do product development because that means just changing a few lines of code somewhere. And it's a lot easier to move money around because all we need to move are zeros and ones as opposed to physical tokens. And the third representation of money is happening inside our brains, inside a neural cloud, which is what forms our psychology or our understanding of money. This is happening inside our brains. So we need to understand why banks are so effective at connecting these three different representations of money for the few of us who are banked, but this doesn't work for so many others. So let's start with the lucky few. The first characteristic of this population segment is that money is born electronic. What I mean by that is that their salary is paid directly into this digital cloud, into their bank account. Because they tend to be richer, the stores that serve these customers, these people who are banked and who have the majority of their money in digital format rather than physical format, the stores will take electronic money because they know that that's the preference of their customers, and they want to make it easy for their customers to buy goods and services at their stores. So there's a lot of digital money moving around for merchant payments. So the money remains electronic while people are using it. But if you do need to access cash for some reason, you're going to buy goods at stores that don't take cash, banks provide a very nice infrastructure called ATMs at which you can withdraw money, that is, convert digital to electronic cash. The third characteristic of this segment is that their income is regular. And what this means is that planning their money over time is relatively straightforward. If summer is coming up and I feel I need to start preparing for the summer holiday for my family, I'll decide that I need to set aside 5% of my income for the next few months. It's relatively easy for me to figure out that 5% is the right number because my income is stable. And banks are going to be providing a host of services or products to make sure that I can stick to that 5% rule. For example, it might be a recurring deposit, which automatically sweeps aside 5% of my income into a separate account. Or a time deposit to make sure that once I've accumulated the money, it stays there untouched until the day that I want to buy the holiday. So you can see here how nicely connected these clouds are. Banking works for these people. Now let's look about the rest of the population for whom banks don't work so well. Let's understand why. Of course, the first characteristic is they tend to be paid in cash. They may not be paid a lot, but what they make is in cash, and so they're starting the game on this side of the picture. These are their wages. So if they want to access modern banking to be on this side of the picture, the first thing they need to do is to find bridges from physical to the electronic world. But notice how these ATMs are one way. They're largely for withdrawal, not for deposit. So they have to find branches at which they can deposit. These are fewer and far between. They're also the higher cost channel for the bank, and so the banks are not going to be particularly pleased to see large numbers of poorer people who are cluttering their branches to do small transactions. So as a result, these people are not going to be made to feel welcome at these branches because they're poorer. But let's say that heroically I managed to cross my money into the digital world. What can I do with it? Well, the stores where these poorer people who have more cash than electronic money, they have little incentive to take electronic money because few of their customers are wanting to pay electronic. There's no pressure on those stores to take electronic money. As a result, these merchant payments are not likely to be an option for them. There will be another type of electronic payments they can make, but they tend to be more remote payments where cash is particularly ineffective. Sending money long distance, it's a lot more easy to do in digital format than in cash. But those remote transactions are few. You might want to send money home once a month, pay a bill once a month, but the result is that you see little reason to cash in your money just to send money to other people because those transactions are few in number. The other characteristic of this segment is that their income is irregular. No one is guaranteeing them a salary at the end of the month. For some people, it may be very unpredictable as to when the next dollar is going to come from or from where. As a result, they cannot live by rules. This 5% rule, for example, that works so well for that lucky family who has a salary, makes no sense for a poor family with irregular income. Because tomorrow, if I don't make a lot of money, it makes no sense for me to be saving 5% of the little that I make. I might even need to be dissaving to put food on the table. And if tomorrow's a good day, I make twice the amount that I normally make, I shouldn't be saving 5%. I should be saving 100% of the extra money that I made on that day. So if you cannot live by rules, what this means is that planning needs to be almost a daily occurrence. You need to be planning every time you make a little bit of money, because you need to be deciding on the spot what to do with it. So how do poor people with irregular incomes tend to plan? What they tend to do is to designate separate pots of money. They separate out their money to meet different goals. This one here, for example, might be a little pile for food. This is for the schooling for their children. This might be to buy a motorcycle, etc., etc. So separating out the money helps me budget, because now I can see where my shortfalls are. But it's not just a matter of budgeting, because I'll take the extra step and actually put this money in separate receptacles. The food money will go into a jar that I hide somewhere in the kitchen. The school money I'm going to put under the mattress. The cycle money is why I'm going to be participating in a Rosca with my neighbors, and so on. By physically storing the money separately for each of these things, it helps my self-discipline, because even though this is cash in the jar, it's not general liquidity, it's for food, and that is how I discipline myself. So if a bank comes along with an account, this account here, I'm not likely to want to collect all the money that I've carefully separated out and stick it into that account, because that goes against the grain of how I discipline myself. If I put all my money into one single account, at this point, any dollar is the same as any other dollar. It's a lot easier to extract a little bit of money, because there's no face to it. There's no purpose assigned to that money. If the family takes this account, at most it's going to capture one purpose. But of course, because it's capturing one purpose and not the collection of them, the balance in that account is not going to be very high. So what we can see here is that unlike with the previous case, now these things are not very well connected. I arrive in the cash world. I find difficulty to cross my money into the digital world. Once I'm in the digital world, I have few purposes for it in terms of payments. And if any excess that I hold, it doesn't really correlate with how I think about money, which is about separation. And if the bank offered me different accounts for each of these different purposes, that would be too unwieldy for me to manage. This just doesn't work for me. As a result, half the world stays outside of banking. So let's go back to our three clouds. So what we just learned is that what we need to do to achieve financial inclusion is to seamlessly connect three clouds for everyone. And that is really three different operations. The first one that we need to ensure is very good bridges between the physical and the digital clouds. This is essentially about putting in place an exchange infrastructure so I can easily and seamlessly exchange cash for digital value and vice versa, deposit and withdrawal infrastructure. The second one is, once I'm in the digital world, I should be able to stay there and do all my payments from it. This is the money transfer function or payments function. So that once I'm in the digital world, I don't feel I need to go back to the cash world to make individual payments. And the third step is making a connection between how I store and hold my value in the digital world and how I think about it. This is the planning function. And from the planning, that then creates the savings and credit purposes that allow me to plan my money. So here we can draw a line. Below the line here, we have real-time services. Because if I do an exchange of physical for digital value, that should be in real time. The moment I do a deposit and hand over cash, my account should be credited. The moment I send money to someone, my account needs to be debited and their account should be credited immediately. This is largely about payments. Whereas above the line here, this is about transactions over time. This is about helping me store value, so I can trade off money that I have today against objectives that I want to plan for tomorrow. And this is the fuller set of banking services. So what do customers expect from banks to achieve these three basic things? On the exchange side, I need deposit and withdrawal points that are nearby. These are frequent transactions. I'm not prepared to go very far for them. Second, they need to be near me, not just in a physical sense, but also in a cultural sense. They need to be welcoming. And the third thing is that they need to do transactions in small amounts, commensurate with my income. For the transfer function, this needs to be universal. So I can send money to anyone in my social or business circles. And for me to want to make these payments electronically rather than in cash, the system needs to be at least as good as cash, which means this needs to be cheap or even free. It needs to be fast. It needs to be simple, because these are basic characteristics of cash payments. And on the planning side, because I need to be planning every time I make money or every time I become aware of a need, like I see my children running around with shoddy shoes, I need to be able to plan immediately for that money. So there's an element of immediacy. Capture the moment of determination that is important. It needs to be intuitive, so that the digital services that I'm using for savings and credit reflect how I think about money. They do that separation. And the operation of these services needs to be simple and easy to use. This then sets out the broad challenges for financial inclusion.